Okay. So let's do this one. So square root of 7x minus 5 plus x is equal to 7. Let's say we want to solve this. And while we're at it, since we just talked about it, let's also find the domain of the square root part of it. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, you know, we've had these kind of advanced methods for solving polynomials. The ones I'm going to give you for square roots and absolute values, and later on when we talk about exponents and logs, they're really actually getting back to more basic solving where you're just trying to isolate the x. You're just trying to isolate that x. There might be a more advanced polynomial along the way, as we'll see in this one. There's a quadratic involved, but you know, the goal is to kind of get at that x. And here we have two x's, which makes this actually a little bit harder than some radical ones. But the harder one, obviously, is the one stuck inside the square root. So that's the one I want to kind of get at first. So how am I going to do that? Well, the whole motto I like to think of is we want to isolate the hard thing, or in this case, it's the radical. Isolate the radical and solve. So let's do that. So of course, to get us started here, let me just subtract this x over, because that'll basically isolate the radical right off the bat. So, oh, sorry, I didn't mean solve, I meant square. Well, we want to solve too, I guess, but we want to square both sides. Anyway, okay, so going back to this problem, we're subtracting x from both sides. We got this. Okay, so why did I say square both sides? Well, of course, the square root is designed to undo the squaring, and squaring is designed to undo square root. So they're a perfect match made in heaven. They're just going to go off and do their own thing behind closed doors, I guess, and then we'll be left with a polynomial which we're going to solve. So we get 7x minus 5 is equal to, unfortunately, because we have this extra x in here, it's going to turn into a quadratic, but it won't be too bad. So if I square this, of course, I'm going to think of this as x minus 7 times x minus 7 and FOIL it. So it's going to be, well, I say of course, but this is actually something that people forget a lot. So I might point this out as something that's a very common error. People forget to actually, a lot of people just say, oh, this is 49 minus x squared. But no, it's not 49 minus x squared. Because you have to FOIL, need to FOIL. Okay, so with that digression out of the way, let's go ahead and FOIL it. So it's 49 minus 7x minus 7x plus x squared. So now we have this equation, and while we're at it, why don't we, you know, it's a quadratic, but we want it equal to 0, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And you can kind of see what we're going to get here. We're going to get minus 21x plus 54 with that x squared as well. Let me just go to a new page. So we get 0 is equal to x squared minus 21x plus 54. And now you've got a pretty simple quadratic to solve. If you want, you can do quadratic formula. That never hurts. This one does factor, though. You see how it factors? I mean, 54, the first thing I think of, so we want two numbers that add to 54, multiply to 54 and add to negative 21. The first thing I think of is 9 and 6, but that doesn't quite work, right? It's also divisible by 2. 2 times what? It'd be 2 times 28. No, 2 times 27. That's not quite right. But eventually you're going to come up with maybe 3 times 18 is 54. And if you subtract those, they add to 21. Great. So we get x equals 3, x equals 18. But we're not quite done yet. Well, I don't actually, so this relates to something we're going to maybe do later. Let me go back to the problem here. Actually, let me go back to this version of it. So before I canceled, let me type this into Desmos real fast. So we've got square root of 7x minus 5. Let me get rid of some of the stuff. Okay, so this is the left-hand side of not the original equation, but just after I moved the x over. Then we had 7 minus x. So that's 70x over x. That's the one, right? There we go. And you can see pretty clearly that you're only going to get one solution here at x equals 3. So, so what's going on? Why did we get this other solution, x equals 18? So this is actually something I'm going to cross off. It's not really a solution. This is extraneous. Why did we get that other solution? Well, we see that, let's go back to Desmos. There's something kind of funny about square roots. So if I just type in, if I just give you a square root, to make it a function, we kind of assume that we're just taking the positive square root, basically the positive numbers, as you can see here. However, there's also kind of this undercurrent that you also have the negative solutions. So let me actually type in the negative 7x minus 5 here. And as you can see, if you put the positive square roots with the negative square roots, you actually get this nice sideways parabola. And that's no coincidence. That's because the square root is undoing a parabola. Therefore, its shape is basically a sideways parabola. Now, this other solution down here is that 18 that we found. Okay, so what do we make of this? Well, a lot of the time, this is very, very common with square roots, you get an extraneous solution. So I do want you to cross this one off, but you can kind of see where it comes from. It comes from if you would have taken a negative square root here instead of a positive square root. So now it is a positive square root, so we really only get that x equals 3 solution, but It's very common. And what you can do if you could type into Desmos like I did, or you could just plug these into the original. So you can see that if you plug in 3, you're going to get 21 minus 5 is 16, square root of 16 is 4, plus 3 is 7, that works. If you plug in 18, you get like 70, 126 minus 5 is 121, square root of 121 is 11, plus 18 is like 29. It's not equal to 7. It doesn't work. So you just plug it into the original if you want. Okay, but we're not quite done with this problem yet either, just because there was a second part. What is the domain of the square root of 7x minus 5? Well, if you just look at Desmos, you can see it. But the other thing you can do, well, maybe I'll just start the page. So we're doing domain of square root of 7x minus 5. What is the domain here? Well, basically, we just don't want to take the square root of a negative number. So I'm actually going to take the 7x minus 5. Notice I don't have the square root. It's because I'm just taking what's inside the square root, and I want what's inside to be bigger than or equal to 0. That's going to allow me to take the square root and be, outside the domain. And now I just have this kind of simple inequality, which I can solve real fast. It's not maybe the prettiest answer in the world, but you get x is bigger than or equal to 5 over 7. So here's 5/7. There's our domain. Those are the values of x that you can plug in, and you're good. You're in good company. But let me just point out that x18 was in the domain. This is still in the domain. It was fine. It just didn't work in the solution. So. Okay, so kind of a lot of moving parts there, but hopefully that was helpful. I'm going to stop the recording, at least that one.